everybody, my name is Brian, I'm 24, I live in New York City, and today we're going to talk about being friends with people you disagree with. Fair disclaimer, I'm a pretty opinionated person. I tend to have pretty controversial opinions, and as a conservative dude who is also Christian, living in New York City, living as a young adult, it's not uncommon to come across people that I disagree with or disagree with me, which I have no blanket problem with. Also, disclaimer, I think that this idea of everyone's opinion matters is kind of stupid. I think there are right opinions and wrong opinions, which is kind of against, the recent meta of open-mindedness. I wouldn't say I'm closed-minded. In fact, I am very open to having conversations with people I disagree with. But I am of the strong belief that in your own view or in your own world, people are either right or they're wrong. Everyone can't be right, especially if you disagree on things. Either you're right or they're wrong. That is the worldview that I hold. But for the purposes of this conversation, I've always been someone that is very, very, very open. I don't want to use the word open-minded because I think it's been framed the wrong way, but I've been very open to talking to people about different things that I disagree with. I've had plenty of conversation, and in fact, most of my friends are in disagreement with most things that are pretty fundamental to worldviews with me. I would say most of my friends, 99 plus percentage of my friends around me, especially when I was younger during college, did not agree with me on most things. And I enjoyed this. I actually got a thrill out of arguing with them and having conversation, them trying to understand me trying to understand where they're coming from. One thing that I want to make clear is that there's a difference between fundamental differences and differences that don't really matter in friendship. For me, when you make friends with someone, the fundamental differences matter a lot because it changes how you view those individuals, like hot button topics like abortion or homosexuality or taxes, things that actually affect people's everyday lives, the general well-being of society, things that tackle/question someone's morality. Those things matter because if you're trying to be friends with someone, that person's morality, that person's moral compass, and also the way that the person cares about things matters in how you evaluate them as a friend, because you're a human, they're a human. That human relationship is based on them being humane. And if their humanity isn't in line with how you define a human should be, then there's bound to be problems. And especially when you throw in morality and think about whether or not a certain opinion is moral or not, or the right thing to do, then it is undoubtedly going to bother you. I will say on this point, I've met plenty of people in my life who frankly don't care about these things, which comes to my surprise. I always ask them, you do know that I think X, Y, Z about these things. Do you care? Do you still want to be friends with me even though you fundamentally disagree with me on these things? And even in the moments where they fundamentally disagree with those things, they're okay. So I think this evaluation point of thinking, does it matter that this person thinks differently from me, is a good starting point for evaluating friendships based on disagreements. For me, it actually does somewhat matter in the sense that if they devalue my worldview or if they continue to question it, if they continue to me to be immoral, it's not even that I don't want to be friends with them. I question why they want to be friends with me. But if they're truly, and for lack of better words, open-minded about having these conversations and willing to understand this side of things, then I am all for that kind of friendship. I actually prefer friendships that talk about these things. I will go as far as to say I don't understand friendships that don't talk about these things, deep things, because otherwise, what are human interactions and conversations good for? So I think the types of differences matter and the approach to differences matter. If you don't like pineapple on pizza, I'm not going to hate you. If you don't like mint chocolate, I'm not going to hate you because I also don't like mint chocolate. Bottom line, in summary, I think what you guys are different about obviously affects the friendship, and how you approach those differences also matter. We would be lying if we said all human interactions at the base level are transactional. What they give you and what you give them has to be balanced / be worth it on both sides for you to maintain that friendship. Of course, we're not thinking about this on a daily perspective. I'm not meeting up with Billy Joe and thinking, what is Billy Joe providing me in this instant? And he's not thinking, what is Brian giving me in this instant? But subconsciously, actively, doesn't matter which way, you are probably constantly thinking about, is that person's, whatever that person's giving me, is that worth whatever I'm giving them? Which could be a function of time, money, effort. And I think that also brings in this whole area of differences where, is this person's difference with me? Is this person's difference in opinion, what they bring to the table, how they view life? Is that difference from me big enough or small enough to combat how much value they bring into my life? I think that's something that you should constantly be cognizant of, especially if you fundamentally disagree with someone on a worldview that matters a lot to you, on a cause that really, makes your blood boil. If that is something that they fundamentally disagree on, but yet they provide good value in life, and maybe you guys go climbing together, or you're golf partners, or you are coworkers, and the value that they bring in that context of the friendship is greater than the difference that you guys hold, and the consequences slash the outcome that comes from the difference, then I think it's fine to continue the friendship. And again, this entire video is not meant to encourage you to break it off with a friend that is causing this difference or has this difference. But I think in recommendation, if that difference is bringing you such pain and constant conflict whenever you're interacting with this person, even in relationships, but specifically in friendships, then I think it's okay to reevaluate that friendship and somewhat organically cut it off. If anything, you guys might both mutually think it's time for you to move on and not necessarily hang out. But I've seen a lot of friendships, including in my life, that continue just for comfort's sake, or just because you've always hung out, even though these fundamental differences that become even more stronger as you get older and less malleable becomes so fundamental in defining that friendship, and also becomes the root source of conflicts constantly. I've had to cut people off for both me and their sake, because the fundamental differences we held were too strong, and I didn't want to hurt them and they didn't want to hurt me. And the idea of this person that you theoretically are friends with holding this belief continues to bother you, and that might prevent you from having organic, successful, friendly friendships. I really want to reiterate that having or holding on to something solely for the sake of it always being there is probably the dumbest and the most time-wasted thing you can do. The one exception here, I do think, is family. I think families, it is definitely worth to continuously trying, because family is family and they love you, even if they may have been negative at times and the worldview differences may clash. I think family is worth slash they deserve another chance to continuously work together. I'm very strict slash very family oriented, so I think that's something that where they draw the line. But when it comes to acquaintances or friends, if those differences continue to be a source of conflict, I think it's important to reevaluate whether or not it is worth continuing. I kind of hinted at this earlier, but I do think as I get older, I'm only 24, but as I become more adultish, it's becoming even less malleable. I was never a malleable person in general. I'm pretty principled. My rights and wrongs, my yeses and nos are pretty stationary. I do constantly reflect and make sure that I am correctly thinking about these things and not thinking about these things the way that they are just because I've always thought about them. I want to question whether or not the way that I'm doing things are correct. But I do think as you get older, your brain becomes harder and you become more niched into people that are more similar to you and not really forced by your grade or your school. It becomes harder to be more open-minded. You have less of an opportunity to interact with people that are not like you, and less of an incentive to do so. I think many people become more introverted as they get older and find the need to just scurry away by themselves, and eventually get even smaller and smaller in their social circles and interact with less and less people and choose to interact with people they're more close with. This is a little bit dangerous, I think, because then you get even more polarized and niched into the thought that you've always been thinking. And this circle jerk happens where people like you constantly reaffirm your beliefs and you think that's the right way. And the people that don't hold those beliefs are fundamentally wrong and bad people. All people are bad. But I think as I get older, there's no solution for this. But I've becomingly become more niched into my thoughts and beliefs and less prone slash more reluctant to interact with those that are not like me. Even though that necessarily wasn't ever the case when I was younger. Even though I'm a pretty principled and strongly opinionated person, I always enjoyed interacting with others that differed from me. But I think it's just becoming harder, especially as this world becomes so engulfed in having opinions, and not having opinions is also an issue, and you have to take either B side or A side. There is no grayscale. It's really hard to interact with people that are fundamentally different from you, even if it's on a handful of opinions. I think something that I'll finish off with that I struggle with a lot is, if you care about a person enough, is it our job to change their minds on the things that you find them to be wrong in? Especially in fundamental morality-driven things where it makes you question their humane value, their humanity. And as a justice warrior, someone that really believes in justice and wanting to be correct, but also cares about people deeply, I think I'm still young enough and maybe naive enough to believe that it is my responsibility / burden to try to help people see my way, which I believe right. I know that that's probably an unpopular opinion these days, and we want to leave people alone and let them be entitled to their opinion. I'm of the belief that if you truly care about someone, then it is your job to make sure that they see the right things in life and try to get them, convince them to see that. But at the same time, I'm also very realistic and know that words don't really change how people think. I know because I have never really been convinced by people trying to convince me of a certain way. I've never had this moment of like, oh, I should fundamentally believe something different than what I believe now. I have used that as a moment to reflect and question my beliefs, but I've never fundamentally changed what I believe. I guess in summary of the day, I think that being open-minded in the previous definition of open-minded is a pretty outdated meta. Frankly, I'm kind of tired of it. I've never really been a fan of it. But at the same time, I'm very aware of the fact that as you get older, it's easier to fall into the traps of only surrounding yourself with people that you agree with. And that also is negative because what you believe in could be wrong, unless it's from the Bible. Hot take. Drop the mic. As always, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, and we will have another great week. Let's go.